Well, I always suspected it, but now I know it to be true. God loves boat builders. It's November 18th. We've got 65 degrees, sunny weather, and I'm fiberglassing the decks and cabin tops on the KaaNoo. I'm going to finish glassing this boat. I've had some requests from other boat builders if I would do an in-depth video of how I do my glassing and get it to come out so smooth. I didn't think it was all that smooth, but I think the secret to doing it is just do it a lot. So anyway, I'm going to run some, I don't normally film when I'm doing that because I don't want to get my camera all gunked up and my hands are dripping. I wear gloves, but it's just really a mess, so I'm going to let some tape run and go through how I actually do this from start to finish. And it's mainly just the more work you put into it, the smoother it's going to be. Glassing is not easy, it's hard. It's dirty, it's sticky, it's gooey, it's tiring, and it's difficult. But it sure makes a solid boat. It protects it, makes it watertight, and makes it tough. This is going to be an expedition sailboat. Going to be run into reefs and dragged up on the rocks, and run ashore, dragged up on beaches, might be rolled by big waves and washed up on the shore. So it's going to get beat up, so it's got to be tough. Up here on the bow I've got several pieces, but I've got them worked in there. There's a little bridging piece there, because when you're using resin and cloth, it all becomes one piece really. It doesn't really matter if you use several pieces. You just got to sand the transition areas. And it's very difficult working it up underneath all these ledges, which is what I'm doing back there, and I ran out of resin, so I use what I call the roll and dab method. I use rollers. These are like a medium grade 1/4 inch nap roller from Ace Hardware. I take the 9 inchers and cut them in half, so I got a 4.5 inch roller. I use them on a 4 inch roller handle, so it doesn't come all the way to the end. It kind of, I think, doesn't get it so gunked up on the roller, but I use that. And I use these 2 inch throwaway brushes to dab with, because you can really work that resin and cloth when you dab it, as I'll show you. I use these throwaway roller tray liners, because once you use them with epoxy, they're no good for nothing else. You gotta throw them away. But I use them with a metal bottom, so it keeps it pretty solid. So that's ready to go. And then I use these containers that have the markings for the quantities on the side. And yeah. I like to use, I'm not a spokesperson for System 3, I just like System 3 silver tip epoxy. I've had real consistent results with it. It doesn't give amine blush like some of the other epoxies do. So it's not so critical to when sanding for recoating and taking off the amine blush. And it's not the cheapest, it's one of the more expensive epoxies, but like I say, it works really well for me. And you kind of get what you pay for. If you use the cheaper stuff, you end up doing more work, and you don't get as good a result. So I stick with this. You're doing all this work, you might as well use good stuff. And what I do, it's a 2-to-1 mix, which I find is a lot more reliable than with the higher mixes of resin to hardener. So I mix it in 12-ounce batches. I'll use 4 ounces of hardener, 8 ounces of resin. I mix it for a while. I spend about 4 or 5 minutes mixing it, make sure it has to be mixed really well. Because it helps it go off, so I'll get back after I get it mixed. Okay, I'm going to use my rollers to get some stuff on here. I don't have a lot of room to roll in here, but you can roll this stuff down and you work the air out of it. Get some stuff on it. And sometimes you got to give it a little while it'll start saturating. You want to get some resin on it and work it into the cloth and work all the air out. You don't want any air bubbles. Air bubbles are your enemy. And I use a brush and I dab it. You can work this stuff into corners. You can work it around edges. You don't want to use too much resin because you don't want to float the cloth off the wood, but you want to use enough to saturate it, and you just work it in, and gradually you'll see it. When it gets clear, then you know you got it saturated. And you get little bubbles, you'll get ridges, you just work them out with that brush. Dabbing. You can pull it out. There's nothing like doing a lot of it to get a feel for it. Eventually it becomes second nature and you just tire yourself out. Just rolling and dabbing, working that resin into that cloth, working it all down into all them corners, and working it smooth, working out all the little ridges. Because any ridge you don't work out now, you're going to have to sand out later. And if you get air bubbles or voids, you're going to have to open them up, either cut them out and resin it, or get resin in there somehow. Because any void is a possible place that rock could start, so you want all the voids out. Just work them out. I had a ridge there and I just worked it out. I worked it out down this way. I'm working that. And it'll drive you to fits. It'll buckle up on you. Do all kinds of funny stuff. And you have to work fast because your resin is going off. It's going to go off. You don't want to mix more than you can spread in about a half an hour. Because in a half an hour she's going to start gelling up on you. And then it's not good for much else except filling. So I started around this first, around here, and up under here, because my resin started gelling and I knew I'd have to mix more. And I wanted to leave it a place where I could come back and smooth it out. So. Roller's good for getting resin on large areas. You can't really work it like you can with the brush. The brush you can work that stuff. You can make it go where you want it to. See, now that's molding all around there real nice. It's laying in there pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with that. Any place that looks dry, it doesn't get clear. And sometimes you can let it set for a few minutes and it'll work its way through. At first it seems like you're hardly getting anything on, but then give it a little bit. And that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to work my way back.